All right, we're ready to go. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to Sac Interactive. My name's Nolan. I run this monthly tech meetup. It meets every third Wednesday of the month here in Zoom. We used to meet in person in downtown Sacramento as well, but COVID sort of put the kibosh on our venue, and we're still looking for a replacement location. So for now, it's just here on Zoom. The meetings are always free. They're always open to everyone that wants to come hang out. The topic has something to do with web or mobile development. The actual thing we discuss varies from month to month. It's not always, like, sometimes it's JavaScript, sometimes it's, how to build iPhone video games. We've had all kinds of different topics here in the group. We are always looking for ideas on new topics you'd like to see presented. So if you have something you'd like to see someone talk on, please shoot me a message and we'll add it to the list. And on the other side of that, we're always looking for people that would like to present to the group. So if you would like to, take a turn actually being the speaker for the group and going over something for everyone, please do so. We always encourage folks to do that. It's a really chill, easy, laid back group. It's one of the, I run it, so I'm biased, but I think it's one of the better groups in the area for like starting the public speaking thing. If you don't have a ton of experience with it, this is a good group to go ahead and get started with that on. And that kind of ties nicely into what we're going to do tonight. Tonight will be a developer show and tell. So rather than having one person talk for an hour about something to do with development, we can all take turns talking about whatever you want to talk about. Each person, the description said you get about 10 minutes because we only have a few people here tonight. If you want to go a little bit longer than that to talk about your thing, that's totally fine by me too. And with that, who would like to start? I saw one presentation. Javier, was it you that posted in the meetup earlier about you had a teachable thing you wanted to go over? Or was it somebody else? That was you? Okay, cool. Then I will make sure that sharing screens is turned on, and it is. So if you just want to share your screen and go over your teachable thing, go for it. The floor is yours.
All right, thanks. So hey everyone, I'm Javier. I actually run another local meetup called the Free Code Camp Greater Sacramento area. I'm one of the organizers for that group. So maybe you've seen me over there, I'm not sure, but today I wanted to talk about some courses that I just released this month. And someone's mowing the lawn, so hopefully you can't hear that, but let's see. So basically, I released two courses this month. One is called the HTML crash course, and then the other one's called the CSS and Bootstrap crash course. And I guess I kind of have two things I'm focusing on with these courses. The main thing is that these courses are text-based, so there's no video. And the reason why they're text-based is because one, they're easier to create than video courses, and two, they're also easier to update. So, one thing I'm hoping to do is, I already published them, but I want to get people to sign up, either pay for the courses, or I can give people a free invite, and they can take the courses for free. And I want to get feedback. And again, because they're written, I'm hoping I can iterate, pretty quickly. And if people give me feedback that the course should go in a slightly different direction, or have, add more sections or different types of sections, I'm hoping to be able to incorporate that into the courses. And again, because they're text-based, I'm hoping that process is a lot easier than a video course. And if there's time, maybe I can talk about the video side of things, because last year I did release a Udemy course, and that one's on HTML and CSS, not Bootstrap. So I do have a little bit of experience making video courses, or at least one video course, and these courses are actually based on the transcripts for that video course, because for the video course I wrote everything down in Word. And then I decided to just release them as like separate courses here on Teachable. And I added more stuff like Bootstrap. But so that's kind of like the introduction. The main thing is they're text-based. The other thing is that they're hands-on. So the goal is to, for someone taking the course, is that they're following along. And ideally, they're following along in VS Code because that's the editor I recommend in the course. And, you could use something like CodePen or Replit, but I'm trying to sort of guide students in a more sort of realistic setting where they're working in a real editor. So that's kind of the other big thing is I'm trying to emphasize, working in a real editor. And so the lessons are very hands-on, at least after the first few lessons. So I guess I'll just show what one of them looks like. I think the course, this is the one I released second, which is the CSS and Bootstrap crash course. And I think I'm a little more interested in getting feedback for this one. Now that this is the sales page, I'll end up cleaning it up later because it's not exactly how I want it to look right now. But yeah, I think I'm a little more interested in getting feedback for this one because I think CSS is a bigger topic than HTML, or it's something I think maybe people struggle with a little bit more compared to HTML. So I think this is the course I kind of want to get more feedback on eventually. But yeah, if you visit the sales page, this is kind of what it looks like. You can read a little bit about the course, and you can look at the curriculum. So this is all the lessons. Usually, or when you first get to the page, it's collapsed and you have to expand it. So not sure how well you can see it right now, and I am going a little fast, but these are the sections I have right now. And actually, let me just share the link to the main page. Since I'm signed in, it'll look a little different compared to what you see. But let me see if I can pull up the chat before I forget. So that'll take you to the main page. And then you can click on the CSS one if you want to follow along with me. But you'll notice some of the lessons are marked as preview. So some of them you can kind of look at for free. So I'll just click on, I guess I'll just do link element. And so you can kind of see the basic structure of the lesson. And again, you should, if you wanted to just do like the free lessons, you could, again, follow along pretty closely, using VS Code. And there is a lesson that kind of goes over, installing VS Code, things like that. The first few lessons or the first couple of sections are a little bit different than later on in the course. If I kind of scroll a bit farther, this one's not a preview lesson. It's one of the ones you have to pay for. But just, I think when we get to like the font section, that's when the lessons kind of have a more standard format. So it's kind of more just, you have your intro and then there's the steps for writing the code. And I really try to break things down in a step. So there's multiple code snippets and multiple sections just showing how to, in this case, write out this particular property. And it keeps kind of going from there. And I guess not every lesson has it, but I try to have a section at the end where there's like a final code section. So, as you're going through the lessons, they build on top of each other. And I want to make sure people, can see all the code as they're going through the lessons. So if you already know CSS, these are pretty basic examples, but the intended audience, is people just learning CSS, beginners to web development. So I think along with, I mentioned they're text-based and hands-on. So again, someone would hopefully be following along in VS Code as they're going through these lessons. I think the last thing I'll mention in terms of like the format is I just wanted to focus on them being like short and easy to read as well. That's why in this case, each lesson is just covering one property at a time. Because I really want to like break things down in a really simple steps that people can follow. That does mean that there's a good amount of lessons. I think this one has between 80 and 90, and HTML one is similar. But one thing I mentioned at the beginning of the course is that, and it's kind of right there in the title, if you can just commit to doing 3 lessons a day, you can basically finish the course in a month, or a little less than a month, or a little over a month, depending on the actual number of lessons. So I'm hoping if people kind of read this up front, they won't be as intimidated. And if they can just commit to doing 3 lessons a day, they should be able to get through this in a month. Now hopefully in the near future, there are still a few more sections I would like to add, because this is mainly just on the basics. But I'd like to add some stuff on like Flexbox and Grid in the future. Right now, kind of in place of that, I have, the section on Bootstrap for doing more complicated layouts. But yeah, there is more stuff I want to add in the future. And then I think I'll just wrap up by saying both courses have a GitHub repo associated with it. So if you kind of want to see the final code for each section, I haven't figured out a good way to like do it, step by step. But if you want to check out the final code for a given section, you could look at the repo and go through the folders. And also I just published the code as like a simple GitHub Pages site. So you can also click on this link and then view all the examples here. If you click on them, they'll look pretty random, because again, we're just kind of going through the basics. So it's not, in these examples, you're not really creating a nice looking website. You're just kind of going through like, how do these properties work? And it is, again, just like the final state of the section. If you're in the middle of the section, it might look a little bit different. So yeah, a little random. At the end with the Bootstrap section, I did try to do things a little bit differently and try to make it look like a little bit more of a realistic web page. So I'm using, the simple Bootstrap components like the nav bar, the buttons, the accordions, and it should be responsive, or at least this one's responsive. Might have to fix the other section. I can't remember if I did that intentionally or not. But and then if you're wondering why this is red, it's just because at the end of the Bootstrap section, I mentioned how you can still add your own custom CSS. So usually when I'm trying to show like, a simple CSS example, I just try to turn some text red like that. And so I'm just kind of demonstrating to the students, you can still add your own custom CSS. You're not locked into just the way Bootstrap looks by default. So, and I'll probably add, more to that section in the future, but that's kind of the gist of the courses. Again, I am interested in feedback. So I guess if there's any feedback now, that'd be great. But also if anyone is interested in trying the courses out, again, you could just try the lessons that are marked. If I go back, I think I can, let me go here. Exactly, okay. Well, I can't see it here, but some of them are marked as a preview, so you could just try those courses. But if anyone's like really interested in like trying more of the course or the whole course, especially if you're new to CSS, I'm definitely willing to add you to the course for free. And in exchange, I would just want to have some feedback at the end. I think I still kind of need to work on, my survey to figure out like what exact feedback I'm looking from people. But that is an option. So if you'd like to just try it and you're willing to give me feedback, we can work that out. So I guess I'll just drop my email in the chat as well. If anyone would like to contact me, later. But yeah, I think that's kind of the gist of things.
Awesome. Thanks, Javier. That's cool. Good luck with your courses, man.
Yeah.
I had one question for you, but my question was, have you thought about adding Flexbox and CSS Grid content to it? And then you mentioned that after I thought of it, and like, oh yeah, that's already on your list of stuff to check out later.
Yeah.
The between now and whenever you launch that, just to share for those on the call here, I'm going to share my screen real quick. Where's the button for
Do you want me to stop
that?
sharing or?
No, I think I can do it without you. I can
Okay.
click that, and then yeah, so go over here and go. This is so I run Southwest Shasta. That's my consulting business, and we house the Sac Interactive YouTube playlist. If you go in there, the current one of the videos all the way at the bottom here is Flexbox plus CSS Grid equals awesome. It's a video Scott McAllister did for our group a couple of months ago. That's a really good jumping off point to learn some of that stuff too. So if you want to start with all of Javier's stuff to learn the basics and then the Bootstrap stuff, you can pick up from there and do the CSS Grid thing by watching this video here. And then check out whatever Javier adds for CSS Grid and all that kind of thing in his training courses in the future. And I can throw a link to the YouTube channel in the chat if people are interested in that. I'll put that up there now. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and kick it back to the group to see if anyone else would like to present something for us while we're here. Just me and you today, Javier, I guess. Anyone else have an idea? A demo you've been working on, a JavaScript tool you found recently that you thought was cool?
This is probably not anything anybody here doesn't already know, but I just learned about Stack Blitz, and I was like, oh my God.
I have no idea what Stack Blitz is. What is that? Go for it.
Okay. So I found out about it from Corbin Crutchfield.
Okay, Corbin, I know.
Okay. I was trying to get up to speed with React a little bit, and he is working on a field guide, right?
Yep.
And then I was like, hey, how do you, I started looking at the book, and, I was like, there's not much said about like setting up your environment. And, I have a ton of experience setting up Java environment stuff. So, I'm not scared by having to do a bunch of stuff. I just need to know what it is. And he's like, honestly, to get started, you should just try Stack Blitz. And I went to the site, and it basically runs Node in your browser.
Okay.
And what's crazy about it is to the extent that I tried to use Node anywhere else, this was faster. And I'm like, how is it? It's running on my machine in my browser, and it's still faster. Like, how is that even possible? But the Stack Blitz guys basically optimized Node in some crazy way. It's running in like WebAssembly in a web container in your browser, and it's very efficient. And you don't need to install anything, and you have a Node environment. And that to me was even easier. It's faster than like using Replit. Like if you use Replit and you get a Node project started in Replit, yeah, it's all running on their servers. You'd think that'd be pretty fast, but it's not as fast as Stack Blitz, which is running on your local computer, just somehow very optimized.
Interesting. Do you happen to have a browser window up with this? You can share your screen and show people a little bit about it.
No, sorry, I didn't get my laptop out. I was on another meeting, and I'm just on my iPad, so I just hopped over to this real quick.
No worries. No worries. If you happen to want to present a demo of Stack Blitz in the future, feel free to drop me a line, and we'd happily put you on the calendar to give a walkthrough of how that goes. But no pressure. Just throwing that out there as an idea.
Yeah, no, I mean, if people didn't already know about it, then sure. I just kind of figured that since you guys seem to be very front end, experienced, that it would probably be just like, oh yeah, well, of course.
I am of the opinion that there is so much to learn in the world, especially in front end dev these days. It moves so quick. It's not possible to know everything all the time. This stuff is going to fall by the wayside. And then the other side of that too. So people are going to just know things that I don't, and vice versa. And, this bit from you or something about the way Javier describes a certain CSS thing in his class might be the magic way that it's described so that something clicks in my head better than the ways I heard it before. Like, so I started programming in C and C++. Those were my first languages professionally. And there's a concept in those languages called pointers. Pointers confused the hell out of me for a really, really, really long time. And they never, I just never clicked. They never clicked. I'm like, Jesus, I'm like barely passing my tests in college. Like, this is terrible. How do I fix this? And I was fortunate enough that I worked with a guy who was a programmer, and I'd go, please tell me about pointers. And he'd write down a demo. Basically, we went back and forth a lot. He eventually wrote up this one page of code showing me, like, here's how pointers work. And something about the way he formatted that one chunk of code, they finally clicked for me. And so I carried that piece of paper with me for years, because that was my only point of reference that made pointers make sense to me. So, like, what I'm trying to say is, just because somebody knows something doesn't mean you can't explain it differently. That'll make the things click better for other people. It's like knowing Stack Blitz filled in a gap for me. I'd never heard of that before. The way Javier explains CSS might be the magic way it gets explained so that somebody understands, whatever facet of CSS or Bootstrap that they hadn't checked out before. So yeah, I never feel like, oh, there's no way. Like, yeah. Anyway, so when I'm babbling here, Tim. Sorry. Any ideas you got on stuff? Like, I'm certain it's not something that everyone in the group always knows, no matter how beginner or intermediate or advanced the thing is you want to check out. So thanks for sharing that. I'll have to check out Stack Blitz later. I think I'm going to see Corbin probably next week at, do you ever go to the Sac Tech Social meatups? Do you know about those?
If you're there, I'll see you.
Okay. Yeah. So I go to those. I haven't in the last couple of months. I've been out of town on the weeks that they've been having them. But yeah, I'll probably be at the one next week. And we can both, high five Corbin and talk about Stack Blitz while we're over there. So for the rest of you in the group, if you don't know this, there is a monthly in-person meetup called Sac Tech Social. It's another Sacramento tech meetup thing, kind of the opposite of this one, in that this is virtual for now anyway. And we talk about code and meet from our laptops wherever we happen to be at. Sac Tech Social is basically an excuse to go get food and drinks and hang out with other local techies in the community. So everyone meets currently at a place called Hop Garden, over off of Freeport Boulevard. I think Franklin Boulevard. I'm sorry.
It's Franklin.
Yeah. Thank you. And people just kind of hang out and get some burgers, and they've got a great big patio in the back there, and we all just kind of hang out and meet other local tech people, and sometimes talk about code and sometimes talk about whatever else is going on. So those are worth a couple hours out of your month if you feel like going and meeting people. And the guy Corbin that Tim mentioned, Corbin goes pretty often. I go when I can. Various other techies that you might know from other stuff. Anyway, too.
Yeah, and it's pretty diverse. So it's not only like one kind of programmer or whatever. I've met like people that program and Go. I've met people that are front end people. I've met people that are back end people like myself. I spend a lot of time with Java. But there's a bunch of different people in that crowd, and it's a pretty large draw at this point. And I would say that's like my must do each month going forward. And now that I've gone to a couple, I'm in the process of rebooting my career, and so networking is now at the top of my list. And so LinkedIn is of course a big factor. But as far as local is concerned, there's nothing like meeting people in person. And there's definitely a lot of different people there. And Mark does a really good job, of keeping everything organized. And you've probably already mentioned the Sac Tech Social or Sac Tech Slack. They have a Slack.
Oh, I have not mentioned that yet. Not today anyway. But yeah, there's a Slack channel for Sac Tech Social as well, for people to learn about not just the meetings, but chat about all kinds of just whatever stuff.
Do you guys have a channel specifically for this group on that Slack?
We do not. I post in their Slack channel when we have a SAC interactive meeting. Like, there's an announcements spot in there, and I'll throw a thing in there once a month saying, hey, there's another SAC interactive meeting on such and such day.
Yeah, I think that's how I found out about this.
Okay, cool. A promo is working then.
But as far as showing stuff off, you don't have a dedicated channel. I noticed a lot of the other meetups are using this Sac Tech Slack as sort of a hub, and they just have like a channel for themselves to share links and stuff.
Yeah. I haven't even, to be honest, no, I haven't even thought about doing that in the Sac Tech Social.
But you guys
Slack.
don't have your own forum or anything?
No, nothing that organized yet. It kind of, to me, it overlaps. So this group, we're kind of getting, let me babble again at you, Tim. So there used to be a group called the Adobe, God, what was it? It was the Sierra Multimedia User Group, and then that morphed into the Sacramento Adobe user group or Adobe designer group or something to that effect. And it was sort of a very designer centric group that met once a month, kind of like this one. It was like 90% design UI stuff and 10% code. And I started this group and we sort of advertise it as like, it's like the sister group to that one. It's like 90% code and 10% design, whereas they are 90% design and 10% code. So go to both and learn, you know, all the layers of building your stuff. And it sort of started from that angle, and then it's just kind of done what it's done over time. That group is no longer around. I chat in the Sac Tech Social Slack a little bit, post when we have a meeting here, but we don't have like our own channel in there to talk about like show off the developer show and tell or share stuff among people in the meetup group. Occasionally someone will, we advertise on meetup.com every month. There's a link on there to sign up for this. And occasionally people will comment in there about something, but for the most part, no, it doesn't actually have that virtual level of interactivity in our own spot. Like,
it might be a great place to post links, like even during a session like this, because one of the things I've realized the hard way about Zoom is that if you don't copy paste stuff out of the chat before the call's over, it's like, oh, it's gone.
Yeah, seriously.
And so things would persist there if we use that.
True. Maybe I'll talk to
and
Mark.
I'm sure Mark would allow you to create a channel, you know. And I'll say, I think that the current naming for your group is spot on. I think that is the great way to market it, because it's much more obvious that you're trying to cover both design and code. And so somebody like me that's a coder, I wasn't too intimidated, where it was like, if it was specific to design stuff only, I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna be such a noob that like I'm, you know, whereas this, I feel like I could show up, and if I didn't understand the design parts as much, I could still maybe like learn a little bit as I go, you know?
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. I feel like this group, it's been around for got to be about 10 years now. And it's always been one of our focal points is like, make sure that the group is easy for people to join. And there's never been, and learn something, whether you're beginner, intermediate, or expert. Like, so the topics rotate from month to month. Sometimes it's easier for people that have a Java background, or sometimes the topic will be better for people that have a design background or know a lot about search engine optimization or whatever. Like, we rotate not just topics, but skill level needed for entry to the meeting pretty regularly to help kind of keep it comfortable for everyone. And it's a real chill group too, just as far as like the vibe of who presents and how easy I feel like it is for people to be here and not feel like they're too much of a newbie to be welcomed. Like, we don't, if anyone ever did do something that, I don't know, if I had a speaker that made some slick comment that made it seem like, okay, they're trying to puff their chest and make the beginners in the room not feel welcome, I would immediately shut them down. Like, yeah, that's not going to happen here. Then we've never, ever had a problem like that in all the years I've been running this group. So anyway, yes, Sac Tech Social, highly recommend them. I actually have a meeting with Mark later tonight about some Adobe stuff. It's funny that you mentioned Mark Takata's name. I'm like, yeah, when we're done with this, I'm going to take a break and then log back onto Zoom and chat with him in a couple hours. He's another good dude. I had,
yeah,
I
was just talking to him earlier. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah?
Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Oh, I was just IMing him earlier today because I spent a lot of time with Java and Python, and I used to use Jython a lot. And Jython's unfortunately kind of at the end of the road, where it's like only supports Python 2 series. So they kind of died at 2.7. And, you know, Python world in general has moved on to Python 3. And he thought there was maybe another way that was around. And he pointed out this thing called JEP or JEP, which looks kind of promising for it allows more of a process interconnect between a JVM and a Python interpreter, but without too much trouble. And so they're considering trying to roll that into Cold Fusion somehow, which if they pull off something that makes it work slick, that could be a really interesting draw, because I like Java and I like the JVM as a platform, but I don't always want to program in Java language. And having Python as a scripting tool can be really useful. So yeah, he's involved in all kinds of cool stuff.
He is. It's funny that that was actually on my list of stuff to talk about him with in the future too. Was like, oh yeah, there's these different libraries you can use to run Python inside a Java environment, and there might be some fun opportunities to build stuff with that. And, I've heard you mentioned that now, and somebody at a conference I was at a couple months ago mentioned it, and then somebody at a conference before that one mentioned it as well. So I feel like there's enough voices talking about that idea these days that it should definitely
Yeah,
happen.
if anybody could ever get the Jython project rebooted and figure out a way to have that model of doing things support Python 3 series, it would just be so awesome. It was a really easy thing to set up. You could just create this. They had created this Pi servlet that you could just wire into a standard servlet container, and then after that, you could just throw .py files in your web app, and they would dynamically load. So if you change one of those files and just hit that endpoint again, you would get the new code. So you had that really fast turnaround in terms of like you didn't have to restart the whole servlet container in order to just see some new code run. You could just it was kind of like using a JSP or say like Cold Fusion, except that instead of template oriented, it was you could write servlets in Python. So you could do back-end coding, but with quick turnaround between changing the code. Because of course you'd use something with templates built in order to do the part that is going to go directly to the browser.
Right.
But yeah, it's just that missing piece of the puzzle. Having the Python syntax was also a nice thing because the code tends to be briefer, but having it hot reload was a big part of the equation.
Nice. I had one thing I wanted to share before we wrap up here, and then if anybody else has another one they want to share, feel free to as well. Have any of you guys heard of Alpine JS yet? I see one had not.
Only via the HTMX blowing up everywhere.
Okay. I'm not going to demo it.
Have you guys heard of HTMX?
Yeah, Mark loves that. He's a big HTMX fan.
I think Mark knows him as well, but I know Carson from way back. Carson's actually from he used to live in Sacramento. I don't know if he's from Sacramento, but he lived in Sacramento for a long time. But Carson is the one that wrote HTMX.
Yeah, I've heard Mark mention that.
It's actually a follow-on project to Intercooler. So the idea is not super new. Mm-hmm. He just refactored it to not. It doesn't depend on jQuery anymore. Because back in the day, everything was jQuery anyway. So it's like having jQuery as a dependency wasn't a big deal. But he factored it out. So it's just JavaScript. And then he made it a lot lighter weight by taking the parts that were event-oriented stuff out of it. And that is actually handled via a whole separate piece called HyperScript, which allows you to do event-oriented programming. But in all the media attention to HTMX, I found that Alpine is almost always mentioned when he talks about HTMX on podcasts and stuff. He mentions that Alpine is like in the same realm of ideology in terms of how to organize code. And so they're very compatible. You can use Alpine with HTMX.
Interesting. I would not have thought of that. We're using Alpine. I'm just going to share my screen again real quick while we talk about this part. Can you guys see the Alpine JS window now? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're using Alpine on the main project that I'm building right now with my team. And the thing we like about it is two things. One, it's sort of touted as the new jQuery. jQuery is still alive and it has its place and all that. But if you're just doing sort of what I would call the basic stuff with jQuery, firing off an AJAX request, hiding, toggling different spots of your site to make sure they are visible or hidden when you click a button, kind of your standard stuff. You can do all of that basically now with vanilla JavaScript in just as little code as you would with jQuery, because browsers have added so much stuff now just natively that they did not have when jQuery first came around. So if you need to do jQuery style stuff, you can do it in jQuery, or you can do it the Alpine way and use vanilla JavaScript to fill in the bits that you don't need to use a full-blown jQuery style thing to get it done. It's also pretty lightweight, which is nice. It does not have lots of features in it that you may not use. jQuery, unless you do the custom builds, there's lots of stuff in it that you may not actually use on anything. And the other nice thing I like about Alpine is if you are still new to the front-end tools like Angular or Vue, but you want to start heading that way with your skill set, this is what an Alpine chunk of code looks like. It's got the div tags, and you've got these, anything where it says x dash data, this is Alpine JS code right here. That x show open, and then this at click thing. These are Alpine chunks of code, and they look syntax wise similar to Vue and Angular templates that have similar kind of functionality in them. So you could start with something like this and then move into Angular and Vue and that sort of stuff later after you're comfortable with this kind of syntax. And the reason I would say you can start with Alpine JS before you move to those things is if you're new to things like Angular and React, those have a build process involved with them. You have to actually, set up command line tools. You compile your Angular code. It spits out the JavaScript that you run. Then you copy that JavaScript into your project somehow and load it into your .html files and run the app that way. And most of those steps are automatically happening behind the scenes for you, but it's a different way of writing code and has a little bit of a learning curve to it if you're not used to writing things in a JavaScript framework style workflow. Alpine JS does not have that step to it. Alpine, you include a file just like you would include jQuery, and then you can start writing your Alpine stuff in your app. You don't have to compile anything or build it from TypeScript into whatever else. You just do that line just like you would jQuery, and you can start doing your Alpine stuff in your app, and it all works exactly how you would expect it to. Just these little x dash data bits are pretty much all you need to do 80% of what you can do in Alpine JS. There are not a ton of commands either. It only does a handful of things kind of by design. So it's really lightweight, really easy to use, really easy to start dropping into your project. Literally one file. It does, 15 attributes, 6 properties, 2 methods. That's the entire everything that Alpine does. It's just those, 21 to 23 things. And that gives you the whole thing. So super quick and easy to learn how to use. There's pretty good documentation online. And there are also, your typical pre-made widgets of different things, carousels, tabs, all the different UI stuff that you might want to do with your favorite jQuery or other front-end tools. Those are all available up here. And there's even what I would call like a professional set of components you can download for $130. And that'll solve a lot of the common, component level problems for you. Not a terribly large amount of money. Figure like, what do you make per hour? How many hours is it going to take you to build this stuff from scratch? This may be the more efficient way to go with your time. So yeah, Alpine JS has been the thing we've been adding to our projects lately, and it's working quite well.
Since I'm not at a computer, do you want to bring up HTMX.org as well? And we can just show how they're very similar in philosophy. So I think there's 2 main things that they share in common, which is that, like you were saying about not needing a build system for them, right? So that's great if you don't want to live in Node, right? Now, if you're already doing a JavaScript front end and back end, you're living in Node anyways. That's a different setup, right? But what these 2 frameworks allow you to do is just include with the script tag, and that's it. And that's basically how you do your front end. And then all the other stuff happens on the back end. Any dynamic stuff coming from the server, you're just spitting out additional HTML. And so they're what Carson likes to call back-end agnostic, or they even have a sort of joke framework or stack name, Howl, hypertext on whatever you'd like.
Oh, nice.
And then the other thing that these 2 things have in common is that they both subscribe to the idea of locality of behavior. So the stuff that makes it work is right there with the component. So instead of like even in the old jQuery days, you know, you'd probably put the JavaScript somewhere else. And at the time that people were doing that, it was probably because the amount of JavaScript you were going to write was like a lot, and you had to hide it somewhere else, or it just made your templates like unwieldy to move around in. But these days, basic JavaScript has improved a lot, and so the little bits of JavaScript you see in Alpine, it's not a lot, and just putting it right there with your tags makes it easier as somebody that's dropping into something that's already made and trying to understand what's going on. You're reading everything right there. You can see what it does. And HTMX follows the same basic philosophy. Is there's just a bunch of attributes you add to existing tags, and that is how you get the behavior. So locality of behavior. And then another framework that goes with this bunch that subscribes to locality behavior is Tailwind.
Oh yeah.
Because that you're putting your style information right there on the like in the attribute.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a little less familiar with that one, but it got mentioned a lot by Carson. So I believe that is the correct one, Tailwind. It also subscribes to locality of behavior. So on the htmx.org, on the examples link,
mm-hmm.
There should be an active search. Yeah, let's go to that.
Yep. All right.
So on active search, the basic idea is that you're going to have a table somewhere in your page, and then that table is going to get filled in depending on what the user has typed in. But it has the ability to debounce it so that it's not sending too many requests to the server too quickly. All that's encoded right there. So the trigger says key up, change, delay 500 milliseconds. That's your debounce, and then search is the I believe the event. So the HX get is where it's going to get the HTML fragment from, and the search on the trigger is the event that gets triggered there. I believe that's correct. Okay, so if we scroll down, then you should have a sample of it right there on the page where you can start typing in something into that box, and it'll show you results as you type. Try
there we go.
I think the example he did was like AE.
Yep.
And then S. Yeah, so that narrows it down to just 2. And so each time there's another request, you get a different set of rows, but the page doesn't refresh. It's actually just swapping just the table body. And the server side is rendering that HTML on the server as a fragment.
Let's see what we take a look at here.
And so that's where they get the hypertext on whatever you'd like acronym from. It's just that, well, if you can generate HTML fragment, then you're in. It doesn't have to be JavaScript on the back end. It could be, it could be Python, it could be Django, or any one of the other Python frameworks, Flask,
That's kind of generally that's true of all of them though, because unless you're doing something really old and procedural, like if you have a PHP file with inline.
Yeah, you can use
HTMX
with PHP. Yeah,
as long as you're not doing
and it works with a lot of that traditional stuff. The only place it's not going to be a good fit is just that if you're trying to stuff JSON down the wire and then have the front end deal with what is that actually supposed to look like. If it's not hypermedia, then HTMX isn't going to be a good fit because HTMX is built as an extension to HTML. And so you're expected to still provide HTML as what you send over the wire.
Nice. Mark gave a demo of this to me a number of years ago, but it's been a long time since I've looked at HTMX again. I'll have to check it out when I get some time. Look at it in more detail. Or we can both yell at Mark about it next week at Sac Tech Social.
Yeah. if anybody's interested, maybe I'll try to put together a little bit more of a talk through of it. I just knew the active search
Sure.
one off the top of my head, and that's probably the most bang for the buck demo. You know, it's like within a couple of seconds, you're like, oh yeah, you know, it has a lot of the feeling of a modern, you know, single page application, except it's not. It's still hypermedia.
Interesting. Yeah, if you want to put together a presentation on it sometime, hit me up. We'll happily put you on the calendar to check that out.
Is anybody curious about Replit?
Replit would be good too. Yeah, check that out as well. I don't know squat about Replit. Are there any other demos? Anything anyone wants to check out while we're here? We got a few more minutes left. We don't have to. We can cut out early and go get food. Continue on with our evenings. All right, then I'm going to stop the recording, and we'll get this on YouTube as soon as I can. If you're not on our mailing list yet and you would like to be, please shoot me a message with your email address. We'll add you on there so we can let you know about future meetings and that sort of thing. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Appreciate you being here. Have a good night, everybody.